We're going to be running through some early season pitfalls that I think a lot of players fall into at the start of any reset. But we're especially going to be focusing on the things for this season that I think could be a problem. I've been noticing that people have been putting a lot of emphasis into feats of strength and Otacon. And I get that in the first couple of days, you want to like get it, test how powerful it is, and see what's going on with it. And that all makes sense. But I think a lot of people are overestimating how good those things are and not looking at the actual details. We'll get into more later on, and maybe actually do like a deep dive on those things. But suffice to say that I think when there are changes, you generally get like two camps of people, either people who ignore the changes and don't adapt at all. And as a result, they don't know what's going on. They don't know why their teammates are playing differently around things. They don't know like what items are different, what all has changed, and they're just completely lost. Or you get, on the other hand, people who are too well informed, which I think is mostly my audience, where you know what the changes are, but then you don't necessarily know how to adapt your gameplay based on what the exact changes are. Because just because something crazy new gets added into the game doesn't mean that you need to drop everything and focus on that one thing. And so especially with First Blood, with First Tower now being a part of the feats of strength, I see a lot of people thinking that they need to take Ignite just for the First Blood reasons. Now, obviously, Teleport, I think, did get hit pretty hard, but that people are saying that they should take Ignite just to try to get First Blood. I see people saying that like the jungle meta is changing and should be changing to early game champions. I see junglers pathing for like 3 camp into gank, and things like that instead of doing their efficient full clear. A lot of these decisions that people are making to put more emphasis on playing for things like First Blood and First Turret are, I think, a bit misguided, because I don't actually think Feats of Strength is as good as people think that it is. Now, the other thing is that what you get as a reward for Feats of Strength in and of itself, which is the boots upgrade, we went through in the longer video and we might cover later. I don't actually think that a lot of the boot upgrades are really that good for the cost. So a lot of people are assuming that they're just really, really good. And if you look at the stats, like I was saying, compared to building a different legendary item as a third legendary item, I think you're going to be better off building a third item a lot of the time, for the gold even. Now, there are some boots that I think are pretty decent, like Berserker Greaves and the Sork Pen boots, and Ionian boots. So the cooldown boots, the Magic Pen boots, and attack speed boots, I think, are pretty decent passives. But for a lot of other items, like especially the tank boots, when you're spending 1950 gold to get your tier 3 boots, you could have easily come close to completing a third tank item. And a lot of times the passive or the active that you get from that third tank item is going to be so much better than the little shield that you get from Merc Treads or from plated steel caps, that you're going to be way better off going one of those things, whether you get Feats of Strength or not, and then worrying about your boots upgrade later. And so there are some people who are starting to cite already, even though there's not a lot of data, like win rate statistics and stuff like that on Feats of Strength. But keep in mind that teams that are getting Feats of Strength are getting the First Blood kill, they're getting the first turret, and they're getting at least 3 neutral objectives. So a team that's already getting all of these things is already winning because of the strength of all of those other things, right? If you're already ahead a kill and the first kill earliest on into the game, which is the most valuable because gold is more valuable early in the game because the game's snowbally, and getting an extra 300 gold or 450 gold if there's an assist on it in the very early minutes of the game is more impactful than getting a kill later on. That 450 gold advantage that a team gets from getting First Blood, that's what's contributing to the higher win rate that Feats of Strength has. So maybe your win rate goes up, 5-10% because of that 450 gold early. You get first turret, and that's another influx of gold early. And not only does it mean when you take first turret that you got the gold from taking that turret, it also means that certain other things in the game in most games on average are going really well for you. You're probably hard winning a lane in most situations where you take the turret first. Now, there are games where, it's close and two lanes on two other sides of the map are winning and people are, racing for first turret gold or whatever. Or in this case, not first turret gold anymore, but just to get the first turret. That happens too, and that's more even. But most of the time, the team that's getting the first turret is already hard winning a lane compared to the other team. So it also, usually means that you're getting a lot of plating gold, because the more plates you get, the more likely you are to take an early tower, which is another huge pool of gold on top of the 450 gold that you get from first blood, or from just the kill for first blood. Obviously, the first blood gold is gone too. But then on top of that, you get other things. So anyways, the point is that there's people in two camps. There are people who don't focus on the changes at all, and so they just don't know what's going on, and they're lost. And then you have people who know what the changes are, but don't have a great eye for analyzing what the actual result of the change is going to be, and they hyper fixate on that change and play completely around that change. I'm going to change what champion I'm playing. I'm going to change what, summoner spells, what runes I'm taking. Everything's changed to play around this one new thing that's added into the game. When in reality, taking a bunch of grubs or taking a bunch of dragons or Rift Herald, getting a turret before the other team, getting a kill before the other team, getting the gold from doing those things are what are contributing to you having a much higher win rate anyways. So it's not that feats of strength is causing a team to have a 30% higher win rate. It's just that a team that is getting first blood and first turret gold, is probably 20% more likely to win, and feats of strength is maybe contributing 10%. It's like a multivariable problem, right? You have multiple things that are contributing to why the win rate is higher with feats of strength. So I think people are getting confused on that. Same thing with Otacon. Like other neutral objectives, a lot of times Rift Herald and things like that can be ignored in games. Sometimes even grubs, maybe to a lesser extent, grubs are pretty good, but sometimes even grubs or dragons are ignored for extended periods of time because there are better plays elsewhere, and it's more efficient to spend your time farming your camps as a jungler than running from objective to objective on spawn. People have known this for a while, that if you have, because a lot of junglers will start off like in low elo, just trying to secure every objective that they can. And that can actually be a decent strategy to get you to like gold, because your teammates are super unreliable, but by giving them a bunch of team-wide buffs from dragons and things like that, you can generally kind of consistently snowball games and get ahead. But at a certain point, your gameplay becomes very predictable, and you're not always able to take dragon when you want to. You're not always able to take Rift Herald or grubs when you want to. So once you start to get to a higher rank, laners that have priority in mid and top when you're trying to do grubs are going to come kill you and punish you for taking that objective. Same thing with Rift Herald, same thing with dragons, and all of a sudden it isn't that good to prioritize just doing every single objective on spawn, as opposed to farming your camps efficiently and looking for good quality plays around the map and taking objectives when you actually have kills and you can do them for free. Similar thing with Otacon, right? People are hyper focused on like the new objective, they want to try it out and things like that, and so they're, I think, maybe not considering what the actual reward is for getting it. For example, if and I said this in the video where we went over the change, if you get a Hex Drake and it gives you 6% attack speed, a 25% increase on that is maybe 1.25 attack speed or something like that. 1.25% attack speed. So is taking Otacon, for that 25% multiplier really doing a whole lot for you? Maybe it's not doing as much as you think that it's doing. Now, that's not to say that Otacon, shouldn't be taken, or even that it shouldn't be prioritized all the time, because I don't know, there's, other buffs besides that it gives. There's the other form that gives the Guardian Angel thing, and I've actually still yet to see that in action in one of my games. But I definitely think that people are probably overemphasizing it, just like they're doing with feats of strength. And so if teams are rushing to do it on spawn, without really understanding what it gives versus what they would get from doing other things around the map, I think that they're going to miss out on the bigger picture. But eventually people will come around, they will adapt. People will take advantage of players who are playing like that, and junglers who, if let's say full clearing is better than ganking level 3, because of the way the jungle is, even though the feats of strength thing exists, junglers who always gank level 3 will probably get punished in the long run and start losing compared to players who aren't. And eventually people will realize that the good appropriate meta is still to full clear. And maybe that's the case, maybe it's not, but that certainly seems to be the direction I would lean in, although I'm not a jungler. So this is number one. When there are changes, don't freak out and tunnel vision on the changes, and don't be uninformed either. But understand that the dragons, the Rift Herald, the grubs, doing your camps and other things around the map are still just as important. Just because something new or something's new in the game doesn't mean that it's more important or more valuable than the things that have always existed in the game for a long time. So don't, kneecap your lane because you're trying to get first turret and you're greeting for it, or try to radically change your champion pool in jungle to be able to try to give yourself a better chance of getting first blood. It just doesn't make sense to do something like that. And that kind of leads me into my second point, which is when it comes to champion pool, I think a new season is a fresh start for a lot of people to potentially think about playing different champions. And I'm not saying that every time you change your champion pool, it's bad. In fact, of course, many times you could change your champion pool for the better. But if you're very good at a certain champion or at a certain pool of champions, and you completely scrap your champion pool and start over from scratch in the next season, expect to be a lot worse with those champions. You're going to need to relearn, all of the fundamentals that you learned on the champions that you are comfortable on these new champions. And unless they're way, way, way better, which they're probably not, it's probably going to be a downgrade in most situations compared to what you're used to playing for the past year. And so I would not recommend rushing out and radically changing your champion pool. It is a time to stop and think about your champion pool, to reflect on how it went over the last year, to reflect on if maybe the champions that you're playing are too difficult, and there are better, easier champions that you could play, or whether you're having fun playing the game and there is a champion that you enjoy way more that you would just love to main, and regardless of what happens to your rank, that's what you want to do. But that's a decision that needs to be made. But I think that people who are trying to radically shift their champion pool at the start of the season to somehow fit a new meta, especially, again, considering that there weren't that many changes to the game. The biggest changes, like we said, were to Feats of Strength and Otacon, and I don't really think those two things are causing a crazy impact or would cause you to change the champions that you're playing, especially if you're comfortable with them and you have a lot of champion mastery and understanding of those champions. So if nothing has changed, barely any items changed, there were like less champion changes than in a normal regular patch. So there shouldn't be anything in these changes that causes you to radically go out and change your champion pool. The map, right, didn't really change. It mostly just got retextured. Sort of. I mean, there's lots of bugs with it. They did actually sort of do more than a retexturing, but we don't need to get into all of that. The map is fundamentally the same in terms of where bushes and walls are and objectives and that sort of thing. So it's not going to cause you to want to radically change your champion pool unless, like I said, the only upgrade would be, did I play too many unique champions last season? If you look at your op.gg and you see that you played 50 different champions in ranked, instead of just sticking to your 3 main champions, or and maybe you mostly stick to your 3 main champions, but you end up with 10 or 20 unique champions. Okay. Maybe you work on getting that a little bit lower every season. But, when I was lower rank, I spent a lot of time playing a bunch of random different champions, and that can be a good way to learn the game. So it's not the worst thing in the world to do, but it's not going to help you climb in the short term. Only playing your best champions is going to do that. So it's a time to reflect and say, I played too many unique champions last season. I mean, these 3 champions and this one is too hard, and I had a 48% win rate on it last season, so maybe I shouldn't be playing it anymore. And maybe I can upgrade my champion pool by adding an easy to play solid champion to it. that I'm experienced on and comfortable with. I'll try it out a little bit first and see how it goes. And if it's, going well after 20 games or so, I will stick with it. Don't, get into the habit of thinking, oh, well, I'm just trying a champion out and trying to discover my champion pool. So I'm going to play 10 games on 10 different champions or 30 different champions. And now all of a sudden half of your season is gone and a bunch of your rank is gone to just trying stuff randomly. Because you can say that you're trying something and, well, I only put 10 games into it or whatever before I switched off of it. But if you switch off 10, 20, 30 times, you're not going to, end up being where you want to be. So that's another big one. Don't radically change your champion pool at the start of the new season. It's a time to reflect, make reasonable, solid changes with your champion pool, but not upend the whole thing. If you do really feel like your champion pool was absolutely terrible and you were just not good at playing the champions and you need to upend it, maybe try to keep one champion that you're comfortable with from last season that you had the most success on and, replace 2 champions around it or something like that. But try to create at least some crossover between your champion pool from last year to this year so that it's not completely out there. There really shouldn't be that many crazy meta changes with what I'm seeing. So, no need to do that, especially this season. But even in seasons where things do radically change or lots of champions change or lots of items change, and this season was not that. So that's number 2 is the champion pool thing. Number 3, get a lot of questions about when you should play solo queue. And that is kind of a personal decision, but I can tell you exactly how it works, right? So really you can kind of do 2 things. One is you can play right at the start, or 2, you can wait and not play for like a month or 2 months or a couple of weeks or however long you want to wait until after the season starts. And the difference is that what happens is that at the start of the season, people's MMR gets soft reset and pulled back. But not everyone's reset is the same. The higher up you are, the harder your reset is. So that means players like me in Masters or GM Plus are getting a much harder reset, especially because the highest rank we can place is into like Emerald 1. Although when you finish your placements, you can be like D4 or D3 if you win, 3, 4, or 5 games. But because there's a cap basically on where we can place, and we can't place back into Masters or GM, we're going to end up in Emerald 1 or in D4. And there's going to be other players who are, let's say, like a D1 player who's also going to end up in D4, or even like a D3 player who maybe ends up in Emerald 2 but spams 20 or 30 games the first day, and now they've managed to get into D4 as well. And because unfortunately matchmaking doesn't only consider your MMR, it also considers the face rank that you're playing around, which is something that Riot added in the last couple of years to try to not annoy people with those games where it looks weird because you're playing with somebody who's in gold when you're in Emerald or something, even though their MMR is really high and they're smurfing. As a result of that change, it means that, well, if I'm in D4 and this other guy's in D4, MMR matters a lot, but based on our face rank as well, we're much more likely to match with each other than we would have if that guy was in D4 and I was in Masters, or if that guy was in D2 even and I was in Masters. So same thing down the line with other ranks. What this means is that you're going to get more variance in your games. Rather than a game being 5 Master 100 LP players versus 5 Master 100 LP players, or in a more common rank, rather than 5 Platinum 4 players versus about 5 Platinum 4 players, with maybe the range of the divisions being, maybe you have a Platinum 3 player, a Platinum 2 player, maybe you have a Gold 1 player here and there, but you're within a certain range. You're going to have a wider range of players. You'll get suddenly some players from Emerald playing in your low plat games because you've played more games at the start of the season than they have, and they waited a little bit to play. Or you're going to get people who were lower, who are in like Gold 2 or Gold 3, but who had really good placement games and are now shot up a little bit too high playing in your games. This variance is good because it can create upward mobility, meaning that if you're a player who's lower, it actually means that if you get the opportunity as a gold player to play against plat players more often at the start of the season, or as a plat player to play against emerald players more at the start of the season. If you can do really well at the start of the season and hold your own when you're playing with people that are higher than you, that can kind of drag you upward because you're proving that you can play in, platinum or emerald when you were in gold or in plat. And so that can be a really positive thing, and it creates a lot of upward momentum. And of course, the reset hurts boosted accounts, helps to cull really bad players who were kind of hard stuck at their rank and maybe not able to climb back there and would actually struggle in a rank slightly below them. So it kind of helps with all of that upward mobility, but at the cost of the game quality. The game quality has this very wide variance because, let's be honest, most of the time the result isn't this gold player massively impressing and performing versus an emerald player versus a plat player. Instead, they just kind of get destroyed, and that team ends up just losing because of the early season variance. And that's just kind of how it goes. So the downside to playing at the start of the season is you have to deal with that variance. You're not going to get consistent games of people from right around the same rank. You're going to get much lower players in your game, but also much higher players in your game versus you and on your team. But as a reward for that, right? First off, you get to climb faster. You could potentially be in that pool of players who is punching above your weight and playing against people who are higher than you to potentially gain more MMR and prove that you're able to play at a higher tier. But on the other hand, like, your games, even though there's more variance, are still higher quality because the average rank of the player that you're playing with is still the MMR that you were the previous season. So even though you might end up with that gold or silver player every once in a while as a plat player at the start of the season that you wouldn't have ended up with before, the average rank of the players that you're playing with is still plat because you're also going to be with and against some emerald players. So now all of a sudden, the average MMR that you're playing with is still the same. Whereas if you wait, let's say like a month or two, the downside is that the average MMR of the players you'll be playing with a month or two from now is way lower. And so what ends up happening if you wait is you don't have to deal with the variance. So when you come back, as a diamond player or something, and now you're playing in like plat 1 up through emerald, you're playing against legitimate plat players when your rank says you're in plat, and it can be easier to win 60% of your games because you're actually playing in plat games if you're good at smurfing and playing with people who are worse than you, and if you practice or play on another account and don't just let your skill at the game decay for 2 months, because that would be a huge period of time to not be improving versus all the other players who are playing and improving, and b, to just be rusty at your champion and not up to date with playing the game well. So I think that the waiting to play is really for people who are good at smurfing, who hate the variance in their games to the point where they absolutely would just rather play against plat players when their rank says that they're in plat. But as a downside to that, they're never going to get that opportunity at huge potential upward momentum very early on into the season. That doesn't mean they won't be able to, go up later on, though. Of course, you can always go up at any point. But they won't get that opportunity to kind of prove themselves against some potentially higher ranked players at the start of the season by climbing quickly and kind of racing. And when they come back, they're going to be playing in lower quality games. But it depends on what you mean. Games can be low quality because the variance is wide and the range of players is crazy, or they can be low quality because everyone in the game is bad. But everyone in the game is consistently bad, so if you can take advantage of that and you're used to playing at that rank, it can be the less consistent or the more consistent game feels better to a lot of people, I would say. But it depends on really how you feel about that. So if you're somebody who just really wants to climb right away, just really enjoys playing the game, not really any downside one way or the other. It kind of sucks either way, right? Like, either you're going to have to play through a bunch of bad players who are like consistently bad if you wait, or you're going to have to play through some bad players and some good players with wider variance at the start. So for me, I usually always just choose to play a lot at the beginning, and I don't really care. I am going to wait a couple of days this year Not for any strategic reason, but just because I'm busy with some things over the next couple of days, so I'm not going to be able to play. And I don't want to start playing a bunch and then stop playing for a couple of days and then start playing again. That I wouldn't like to do. So I'm just not going to touch my main account for a couple of days, but I will be back to it in a few days. Also, like with there being no preseason, there's no break, right? So I'm giving myself a break because I played obviously quite a lot to get to GM at the end of last season. And so now I need to slow down with how much I'm playing the game at the start of this season. If I were to go literally from having spammed a bunch of games every day for the past, couple of days at the end of the season to instantly playing a million games, at the start of the season, that's not really healthy if you've got other things going on and you're trying to do other stuff. So, that's another big one. I think that's probably all that there is to it as far as major pitfalls at the start of the season. Just stick to what you're already good at and know. Trust me, the game is fundamentally the same season to season to season to season. And the changes are often a lot smaller than you think. Oh, we might want to do a deep dive into the boots. I mean, I kind of talked about it a little bit in the initial video where I was reacting to the changes, but we can definitely pull up like the league wiki and take a look at what's going on here. So let's kind of talk about, I'll just show you like a few basic examples that we talked about in that one. So keep in mind, like I already said, that because you're the first to either kill 3 epic monster camps, destroy a turret first, or get first blood, if you're getting 2 of these things, most notably, I think slaying 3 total epic monsters would be the one, regardless of feats of strength, that would cause your team to be winning the most anyways. Because I mean, this could mean literally like 3 dragons and you're 1 dragon away from soul. Obviously, most of the time it's not. It's going to include a Grubs or a Rift Herald take or something like that. But because, this is such a... these things already mean that you're getting so far ahead, as we've already talked about. It's not really feats of strength that's causing you to win more games. It's just that you've already done these things that are causing you to win. But let's see the boots. Can we see like the actual tier 3 boots? Surely we'll get to it from boots. So like here's a bunch of new ones. So we got like this. So plated steel caps, mercury treads, Ionian boots. This looks like it's the... I'm blanking on the name of it right now. This one. Symbiotic Souls. No, this is that one. What is this one then? Is this Swiftness boots? Can't even tell. So the problem is when we look at an item like Armored Advance, you're getting the 5 armor that you get from having gotten feats of strength that you're given for free onto your plated steel caps, even if you don't buy the 3rd tier of boots. What you do get, as opposed to plated steel caps, is an extra 5 movement speed and an extra 15 armor. So you get 5 movement speed and 15 armor, plus you get the new passive, which is the shield, right? So let's just try to think about whether that is worth 750 gold. And then again, keep in mind that not only should it be worth 750 gold, but it should actually be worth more than 750 gold. Why? Because they took away the first turret gold and the first blood gold in order to give you this as the advantage instead. So if you were getting an extra 150 gold for first turret gold, an extra 150 gold for first blood gold, these things should be worth at least, like, depending on how big they want the reward to be, at least, let's say 300, 400, maybe even 500 gold to your whole team for getting feats of strength. So each boot, if it costs 750 gold, should be giving you, let's say it was 500 and 100 gold per teammate or per player. It should really be 850 gold worth of value to be giving you really even what you were just getting from first blood and first turret gold before in the game, right? Not even to be a buffed reward. To be a buffed reward, it might even have to go further than that. So you get what I'm saying, right? It needs to be much more than 750 gold worth of value to be even worth the reward, because that's what they've taken away anyways that you would have gotten in the previous season. So the thing here is that we had plus 15 armor and plus 5 movement speed. So we can look at like gold efficiency in League, and we can just get some quick numbers to kind of think about how much that's worth. So 5 movement speed is worth 5 times 12, which is 60 gold. And 15 armor is worth 20 gold each times 15 is worth 300. So what I'm seeing here is that the stats that you get from the Armored Advance, which is the Plated Steel Caps version, the armor that you get and the movement speed that you get is worth 360 gold. But you're paying 750. So what you're doing is you're paying 390 gold for this passive right here. And really, like I just said, it shouldn't just be, when we think about, is this passive worth 390 gold? It shouldn't even just be 390. It should be, is this passive worth maybe 490, maybe 500? Because if it's only worth 390, it's only worth what you're paying for it as if this was a standalone item and not a reward anyways. If it's rewarding you with 100 gold, then this passive needs to be worth, this would be 490 or about 500 gold if it's giving you 100 gold reward. So the passive that you get is taking physical damage from champions, grants you a shield that absorbs 10 to 120 based on level, so 60 at level 9, plus 4% of your maximum HP as physical damage shield for 4 seconds on a 15-second cooldown. So let's think about what maybe if you have 2,000 maximum HP, so 4 is going to be 80, so you're getting a 140 health shield one time for 4 seconds on a 15-second cooldown. So probably once per fight. If you're really lucky, 2 times per fight. It does last 4 seconds, which is nice because you might actually be able to use more of the shield than you would for a lot of shields that decay or that go away much quicker than this. So it is a shield that you might actually be able to make use of, because obviously most of the time you do not get that much value from a shield. Most of the time a shield is maybe 40-50% effective, maybe even less than that. Well, I mean, we could also think about shields kind of as health. So let's just do our best to convert this into a gold value. Let's say we have that kind of average, like 140 health shield. And let's just say 50% of it actually ends up being used to block. So that gives us 70. That's roughly equivalent to like 70 HP. And 70 HP is worth 186 gold. But remember, we said that we were hoping that this would be worth 390 gold just to break even with the cost that we paid for it in the shop. If it was a reward, it needs to break even with 490 gold or maybe even 500, depending on how much we got from First Blood, gold from before and how much we got from First Turret gold from before, because I don't remember what they were. I was just saying 150. How much was First Blood gold? It looks like the first kill was 400 gold, and so it looks like it was maybe 100 gold more. We can probably see this in the patch notes. Let's see. Might be gone now that it's changed, but probably somewhere in here. Maybe this, no, this is different. Maybe this old wiki will have it. I mean, it doesn't really matter exactly how much it was, but yeah, First Blood generates 100 bonus gold towards the kill bounty. And maybe 50 towards the assist. I thought first tower gold might have been more. But anyways, it's probably annoying to try to find it because now it's all history. It might be somewhere in the patch history. Okay, so first turret gave 300 bonus gold. So this is what I'm saying, right? Understand what I'm saying. If first turret, let's say that you got, and this is the easy way to get first turret and first blood. Those things already gave you like 150 gold on first blood if you got an assist. So it gave an extra 50 gold, I think, to the assist and 100 gold to the killer. So 100 to 150 for first blood and 300 gold for the first turret. So that's 400 to 450 gold that you're getting. On top of that, this is supposed to be an extra reward. This isn't supposed to just replace first turret gold. It's not just supposed to replace first blood gold. It's supposed to be better than them, right? And it's also supposed to be a reward for getting 3 neutral objectives. So I would say that the reward should be somewhere in there, 400, 450, maybe 500 gold worth of reward on top of what you're paying for the boots, because that's the reward. Second thing I'll add about this, not only should it give you about 500 gold worth of value, it also should be giving that, think about the timing that is, you can't upgrade your boots to get any value from it until you've either completed all of the feats of strength, right? Which is when you get the first sort of advantage from it, which is literally just like 5 armor or something, or 5 attack speed or whatever. Tiny, tiny boost, but it does give you some value right away. If you've got your tier 2 boots completed, and maybe you're completing this sometime between 14 and 20 minutes. You can't upgrade your boots until you've completed 2 legendary items. So this is the other thing people don't understand. 400 or 500 gold for your team, let's say a team that got first blood and first turret gold on the last patch in season 14. They got that gold very early on into the game, especially the first blood gold, right? They got that gold very early on into the game. Getting 100 gold worth of value at 2 minutes into the game from a first blood is way, way, way more valuable than getting 100 gold worth of value from upgrading your tier 2 boots to tier 3 at 25 minutes in the game after you've already completed 2 items. Big difference. I've said this before. I would say that in my opinion, I would rather have 100 gold. Like if you asked me time value of money of gold in League, would I rather have 100 gold at 1 minute or 200 gold at 20 minutes? I would rather have 100 gold at 1 minute than 200 gold at 20 minutes. Easily. 300 is probably pretty even or debatable, but that's how much the value matters, because that 100 gold is going to give you an item a little bit earlier, even if it's just a component, a little bit earlier into the game, which you're going to have that component advantage over the enemy the entire game. You can throw your lead back and forth, but if it wasn't for that gold that you got early, you would not have this extra component that you have, that you're carrying with you and doing damage with your entire laning phase. So the first blood gold early was really, really big. And even the first turret gold, which does come later, maybe like 9 to 14 minutes or something like that. Even the first turret gold, rather have that gold, that 300 bonus gold at 9 to 14 minutes than at, again, 20 minutes when you finally complete feats of strength, or maybe 25 minutes when you're actually upgrading your boots after 2 items. So you're getting the bonus so late into the game that it's not as big as if you were getting it early. So when we go back and we look at plated steel caps again, if the value that we're getting here is worth, I don't know, maybe we're factoring in it as like, it was 186. Maybe we underestimated it in the example because maybe we get it so late actually that we're not level 9 anymore. Maybe we're more like level 11. Maybe we have a little bit more HP, especially on certain champions. Obviously like a Cho'Gath or a Mundo, like Hell Stackers are going to have a lot more HP. So maybe it's, better in those situations. And so maybe instead of 186, we even double the gold value. And we say that it gives you 360 gold worth of value. Well, remember that the stats that it gave, we needed to make up for 390 gold worth of purchasing power. So we're paying 390 gold for it. So even if we double our example, so even if we say that you're like level 18 or something like that, and you have, way more maximum HP, it's still not even worth it's still not even worth the value that you're paying for it. And then keep in mind that the passive you could get from another item, from your third legendary item, is probably so much stronger than this and worth so much more gold value than this, or has so much more value than this, that this isn't even that good. So I know this is one boot example, and I don't want to go through every single one. Obviously, certain ones, like I said, are actually decent, and certain ones are going to be better or worse. That's not for me to figure out every single one. What I'm telling you is that people are over focusing on these things, because when you start doing the math and you start looking at the value that these boots are giving, teams are just winning with feats of strength more because they've already taken these objectives, because they're already ahead in the game, not because they're getting the boots upgrade. Okay, so 90% of why a team is more likely to win because they have feats of strength isn't because of feats of strength. It's because they took 3 neutral objectives and got first blood. That's what matters. The cost of a lot of these boots is not even worth what you get from the boots. You'd be way better off putting it into a third legendary item than upgrading your boots to tier 3. So in some cases, depending on your champion, what your boot choice was that game, feats of strength literally doesn't do anything for you at all. And yet I see countless videos and comments of people saying that it's broken, that it's OP, that it needs nerf, that it's causing your win rate to shoot up 30, 40, 50%, so it must be crazy broken. And I'm sick of people, like, unfortunately tunnel visioning in on the change and not understanding the numbers and what's actually going on with it. So do not try to change your champion pool, change your summoner spells, change your play style, and all of this stuff, so that your team at 25 minutes can spend 750 gold on boots that don't give you 750 gold worth of value as a reward. It doesn't make any sense. So, I don't know. We don't need to go through every single boot. There isn't much more to it than that. Obviously, like, when you look at Armored Advance, it's just not very good for the gold cost. And so I actually think it's kind of a bait. And especially if it means that you're making unoptimal decisions in the early game to try to get access to this later, definitely not good. So do not tunnel vision on the change just because it's new and it sounds important or allows you to do something crazy like tier 3 boots. People just automatically assume that it's going to be good or that it's going to be broken, and that's not how it works. So with that being said, good luck in solo queue and have a wonderful day.